Everyone, welcome to Locked On Lakers for Friday. Brian Kamenetsky, Andy Kamenetsky. The Lakers face an unusually important game given how early it is in the season and make a very curious roster move. That's next.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks to everybody for making Locked On Lakers your very first listen of every day, Monday through Friday, sometimes on weekends, as you'll find out with our post-game report on Friday after the big Toronto game. It's always free, Andy. It's never going to be behind a paywall. Locked On Lakers on YouTube is where over 25,000 subscribers are trying to make heads or tails out of the Lakers not picking up a third-year option on last year's number one pick, Jalen Hood-Schifino, which means he will be an unrestricted free agent at the end of this season. So many things to kind of unpack with that, both about JHS as a prospect and a player, but also what it means really for the way the Lakers are looking at their roster and how they might go forward. So we will get to a lot of that in a moment here. I do want to let everybody know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. So visit FanDuel.com to get started. So JHS coming up here in a second, Andy. But first, it is a very strange thing to talk about the sixth game of the season in anything even kind of approaching the context of a must-win, because it is the sixth game of the season. But if we were going to categorize it, if as close as you can get to that, I kind of feel like tonight's game in Toronto qualifies. Like, they really need to win this game, I think, on a lot of levels.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I don't even think you have to get sort of too cute about it and thinking about it this way. When you're talking about a team in the West with playoff aspirations and seeding aspirations, must-win games can be seen as the ones that are exceptionally winnable, and you must have wins in order to get as high up in the standings as you want to be. So I don't even actually think there's that much, mental jujitsu involved in thinking about it that way. That being said, though, in terms of making sure that the early vibes surrounding this team, the early confidence that they felt internally about the way they had started and the things that they were believing in during training camp and the preseason and during the 3-0 start, that it feels just as real to them after Friday and then, after the game against Detroit on Monday. You want it to feel as real then as it did once you were 3-0.
I think that's the big thing, because you're coming off this game and they lost on Monday and played a credible game. I think It wasn't their best, but that was a credible effort on another team's home floor. And Phoenix is at least right now, is a pretty good team.
Couple shots go down differently, they win that game.
Yeah, they were terrible in every facet against Cleveland. And not only were they terrible in terms of, oh man, we just couldn't get the shots to fall, 3-pointers not with us tonight, all that. They were out hustled. They were, the focus for Cleveland was light years better than the Lakers. Every measurement that you can make, the Lakers were thoroughly outclassed. And it was like that from the beginning. Now that will happen sometimes, even to good teams over the course of a season, but they need to show something. If you can lose those two games. Cleveland hasn't lost yet. They are arguably playing better than any team in the league right now, even though they're not going to get the credit for it. If you turn around and you go take care of business against Toronto, you're back to 4-2. You're going to Detroit on Monday. Things feel better. Things feel right in the world. Things feel like you are a team, a serious team. And you've righted the ship and whatever. If you do not, I think the the volume around the team in terms of, oh yeah, that 3-0 start was a fraud, can get very loud very quickly.
Well, you start thinking about some of the particulars from that loss and some of the things that have happened over the first 5 games, and they start feeling potentially magnified. This was the first game where Anthony Davis was not spectacular, and he was hobbled in this game. It turns out he's fine. He's going to play in Detroit. He said as much after the loss in Cleveland. In Toronto. He's going to play, but he's not even listed on the injury report for tonight. Like, he is absolutely going to be there, confirming what he said afterwards. But
D'Lo also, who was on as long as we're doing the accounting, Austin Reaves also not on the injury report, which is significant given he was limping around during and after the Phoenix game. And D'Angelo Russell, who was questionable and then sort of upgraded a little bit going into the game, is on the report, but he is listed as probable. So basically, everybody who is available for the Lakers should be able to play in this game.
But as I was saying, like, the sight of AD hobbling is always something that make Laker fans nervous, and B, it would illustrate the idea that either AD is going to get hurt, like we always worry about, or AD has to be the absolute best version of himself, because we learned during the 3 wins and the one credible loss against Phoenix that Anthony Davis is actually carrying us in ways that we are not comfortable with. It could start making you really start wondering about LeBron and age. And, he's not going to become trash this season, but is he starting to play, because of his age and the mileage and all that stuff, much closer to what even a very good 40-year-old looks like, which makes it more important that Austin Reaves, who was not particularly good against Cleveland, that hot start was just that, a start, and that's it. D'Lo regressing, first bad game for Rui. The backcourt of Gabe Vincent and Max Christie is not working at all. Even Dalton Connect, the 18 points, were all in garbage time. These are the things. JJ Redick got off to a great start, and then guess what?
Now, to be clear, it's not that you necessarily have to believe all of these things and just be like, everybody be like, okay, settle down, but these are the questions. But, these are the things.
Brian, I'm not done.
I know, I'm new here.
I'm not done. Okay.
I'm new here.
Because then there's the Redick question.
Oh, God.
There's the JJ Redick question. They got off to a 3-0 start, and guess what? The league figured out Redick much quicker than he can figure out them, because guess why? He has 5 NBA coaching gigs under his belt for his lifetime, and all these other guys who are more experienced than him can figure out all his fancy podcast and analytics, highfalutin vocabulary talk. Now I'm done.
Okay. I wasn't sure.
But I'm just saying all
right.
These
and
things,
the point isn't whether or not all of those things are, if you're being, the royal you are being hyperbolic, if you're being overly dramatic, but 3 in a row will bring that out. And, it's because there were so many questions about the Lakers. And I do think it is important for the Lakers to show that they can win games without Anthony Davis having to play like the best player on the planet.
Particularly this game tonight. This game tonight should not require AD to go ham.
They have no Scottie Barnes, who is their best player. Is Quickley still out, I believe?
I will check that right
he
now.
Has been Emmanuel Quickley has been out. I haven't checked his status to see if he'll be ready for this one. Kelly Olynyk, who's like a really solid role player on any team he plays on, but now playing for Toronto, he is not going to play like this. This isn't even the best version of the Toronto Raptors.
He's listed as doubtful against the Lakers.
Okay, so Quickley's probably not.
Bruce Brown is still not available.
Right. Bruce Brown is decked out in cowboy gear.
And Kelly Olynyk is going to miss this game.
Right. That's what I said. I knew he was
confirming it. I'm just confirming it.
As long as you're looking. So yes. You're playing a lottery level team in the East, missing 3 or 4 of its best players. I know it's on the road. It's international travel. You got to win this game.
convincingly. You need to win the game convincingly if you want to quickly start the process of putting all the laundry list that I laid out to bed quickly. Not that beating Toronto solves it all. Like that you know, that's not proof of concept, just beating this team. I'm just saying it jumpstarts that process of normalcy that hopefully gets concluded when you go to Memphis and beat that team.
It allows you to validate the start and say, like, okay, that we're more that team than this team. You know, it would be nice. How about LeBron and Bronny become the first father-son combination to play in a foreign nation because you're up by 26 in the third. You know, something like that, or the fourth.
LeBron typically starts every game at the top of the fourth quarter anyway, so it becomes
right
normal substitution.
You got a 22-point lead in the top of the fourth quarter. You can do it then. How about that? All right, let's get to JHS because there's a lot to unpack here. We'll do it next.
Locked On Lakers is brought to you by FanDuel. You can tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 a Lincoln, and you get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. And the best part of this is you can use all of this information to confirm the hunches that you're feeling. Like if you're watching an NFL game and it just feels like you can anticipate everything before it happens, whether you're talking about great pass or busted run, a big turnover, whatever is happening. But you want to make sure, all right, I'm not getting ahead of myself. You can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. So everything is streamlined. Visit FanDuel.com to start today. And again, you will get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. FanDuel.com, never waste a hunch. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
Fairly uncommon, Andy. I do want to remind people, by the way, LockedOnDaily.com is where you go to sign up for the Locked On Lakers newsletter to have this experience transported every day into your inbox. So again, LockedOnDaily.com, sign up for the newsletter. And stay connected to the show and everything else happening around the league. Get a lot of good information that way as well.
Good original articles too, by the way.
You learn it's not just us, although that's a highlight. It is also some stuff around the network, around the league, help to keep up with what's happening in the NBA. It is unusual in NBA circles for a player's third-year option, a draft pick's third-year option, to not get picked up.
Highly unusual.
It is... third year, fourth year, okay, sometimes teams cut bait. That third year option, it's almost pro forma, like teams just automatically pick it up. And I think that was the expectation with Jalen Hood-Schifino, even with the Lakers, not getting anything of value out of him over the last, first certainly in his rookie season, had an ugly preseason after one good game. Didn't look good after that, but I still think the expectation was that the Lakers would take last year's number one pick and give him a third and pick up that third year option. They did not. It is being reported that they are not going to do it. Jalen Hood-Schifino, Lakers are going to decline the team option worth about $4 million. This coming from ESPN. That makes JHS a free agent at the end of the season. There are a lot of things to look at here, including what it means for like the player development angle, the scouting angle for Jalen Hood-Schifino, the player. Let's start, though, actually with why the Lakers did this. There are a bunch of potential reasons for it. Almost all of them, as far as I can tell, go towards roster flexibility and the capacity to include JHS in a trade. The idea being it's easier to trade him if he doesn't have that guaranteed $4 million next year than it would be if he does.
Yeah, over at the front office show that Trevor Lane and Keith Smith do, they broke this down pretty well. I highly recommend people check out their breakdown because Keith in particular, like this is really his wheelhouse and he knows this stuff quite well. But with JHS off the books and the 5 open spots that Keith was projecting with D'Lo walking at the end of the season, like if they traded him and somebody came back and he's off the books, all of this changes. But if, say, they had 5 open roster spots, that includes D'Lo walking, LeBron still on the team, and this could or could not include
You're talking about next season.
Yes, this coming season. And Maxwell Lewis, Keith said, because he has some degree of guaranteed money, but it doesn't really affect what he's talking about one way or the other much. It would put them $10 million under the tax line and also $18 million under the first apron, which could allow for a potential full mid-level exception at about 14 mil. It's going to get a little bit tricky from there, though, because you're talking about limited resources from there potentially to fill out some of these empty spaces, whether you do that with veteran minimums, draft picks, whatever. But there is, I think, a growing anticipation and expectation that this is about gaining flexibility for this coming off season in terms of who they can add to the team and the type of money they can spend. As for JHS's trade value, unless a team really believes in JHS and is scared that if you put him on the floor and empowered him, he would have such a good season that he could create a bidding war. And this matters because whichever team JHS is on at the end of this season, they are capped for what they could offer him because that option got declined. It's about $4 million would be the max that either the Lakers at the end of the season or whoever they traded JHS to could trade him. And in this theoretical that feels unlikely, they could end up losing JHS for nothing. That aside, as Brian said earlier, it becomes about the assessment that his value increases for a trade if he is seen as an expiring, and now he is.
And I think the stuff for next year is interesting, but it's too far away. But, this idea that they could use the full mid-level, which is, obviously a nice thing to do, but, that comes with all kinds of restrictions in terms of what your salary would, where you're capped out. And it's a hard cap if you use that full mid-level. I really think this is much more about this year and trying to figure out how you can make as many pieces on this roster tradable as possible. And, you can't stack, multiple veterans minimum contracts on top of each other. But JHS doesn't count as that because it was on a rookie scale. It's a different deal. And so you put like one of your minimum guys in, D'Angelo Russell and Hood-Schifino. Now you've got a little around $20 million to play with. If you maybe add Gabe Vincent, it's a little more than 20 million. It's about 20 million. If you add, Gabe Vincent to something like that, maybe now you've got a little over 30 million that you can. So the idea is to try to find as much flexibility as possible. And like you say, if a team believes that they're going to have to pay Jalen Hood-Schifino $4 million next year, they're not going to take him. That is problematic for the Lakers, to say the least. It takes one of their few expendable contracts off the table. The way Gabe Vincent's playing right now, trading him at $11 million next year might be a tricky proposition.
Well, JHS is no longer the sweetener, that's for sure.
Right. No, he would, but he would have been a sourer.
Yeah.
If the $4 million is there. Max Christie at $8 million is not off to, and 24 million, I guess it would be after this season, still owed to him, is not exactly looking like a great trade chip. 5 games in, I get it, but like too many of these things when you have too many untradeable assets.
Vando has not played yet this season. Right. They've already canvassed and recanvassed the market for D'Lo.
The thing about this that is, it is, I think, setting off or should set off alarm bells for Lakers fans is the extent to which I think this is a commentary, even before you get into the commentary on can JHS eventually play, which I think we'll get to in the next segment, is still an open question. He's a 21-year-old, essentially a rookie, because his entire rookie season was a wash. And the part that he could play, he had about a pretty good 5 or 6 week stretch or whatever it was in the G League, putting up real numbers as a rookie. So that part I think is still an open question. But I think it is a really frightening commentary on their view of what the market value of their own players is and how difficult it is going to be to make a meaningful trade with what they have without having to throw in every sweetener they possibly can, without having to put Dalton
They
Connect.
ain't got that many.
Draft picks and Dalton Connect. That's what you got. Maybe, over time, the hope is, I'm sure, Christie starts to play a little better. Vincent starts to play a little better. I mean, Vincent has been a credible NBA player. It's not like it's the idea that he could turn things around and get his sea legs back under him and start contributing is not crazy. But like right now, I don't think there are a lot of teams lining up to take Max Christie based on what they've seen through 5 games.
Probably.
And if you have to start sacrificing the rights that you have to young players, now look, the Lakers could turn around. They can't trade him can't trade him near the deadline, whatever it is. They could turn around and sign him to a 2-year, $5 million contract this offseason or whatever it is. It doesn't mean Hood-Schifino can't be a Laker next year. It certainly lowers the odds. But I saw this as a real red flag as to what they think about their own roster and their ability to improve it.
And it also, too, it raises the question about, their development that they've been talking about wanting to do and their ability to develop and their ability to identify the players.
Drafting and finding players.
That's what I'm talking about.
Development is a different thing.
That's exactly what I'm going to get into coming up next. Locked on Lakers is brought to you by Game Time, and my daughter is 13. We have bonded a lot through the years over music. She's obsessed with Frank Ocean. She also, because there is a wall painting right by her school of the upcoming Dua Lipa tour, that she's already seen Dua Lipa once, but wants to see Dua Lipa again.
She's seen Dua Lipa?
She has seen Dua Lipa. Yeah, that was the first concert she ever went to. True concert. And
did not know that.
Frank Ocean hasn't put out an album in 8 years. Dua Lipa's Dua Lipa. So both of those tours, if they happen, will be very difficult to get tickets for. If I wasn't using Game Time, because they make it easy. Like, you actually look forward to finding tickets with features like Game Time Picks that filters out the confusing, flowery language and just shows you incredible deals on great seats, which is all you want anyway. So it saves you time. They offer panoramic seat views before you buy, so you know exactly what your view to the stage is going to be, what your experience is going to be like. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off.
Okay, Andy, so let's just take as truth, for the sake of this discussion, what's left of it, that while even if you would say that the Lakers would not say that today's news is Thursday's news, I should say, is a full admission that Jalen Hood-Schifino has no future in the NBA, that he's just a bust and whatever. They might say, no, he's still got potential. We still think he could become a good player and all that. It's certainly not a vote of confidence in the idea that that he's not a big miss with that pick. If you thought that he hit or even was close, you wouldn't do this. This is not how you would free up flexibility.
Well, I mean, forget the messaging that this sends to fans. Think about the messaging it sends to JHS. I imagine, to be honest, this is really embarrassing to JHS. Like the idea, like this is not something that happens often at all. And it is looking like this is a very high profile missed pick for the Lakers. They don't often have first round picks at their disposal, particularly in the post AD world in that trade. So they cannot afford to miss with the ones that they had. And right now it looks like, even as you and I have been reminding people a lot about the idea of not giving up on JHS, it's very clearly looking like a miss right now. And it
looks like it looks like the Lakers are giving up on
right. Absolutely. And, this raises the question of scouting and development, which go hand in hand, particularly at a time where the Lakers have talked more openly about the idea of developing players than they have in a long time. And you and I have covered this team for about 20 years. We've been pretty close to this franchise. They never talk about this stuff, like ever. And this is a time where they've been talking about very enthusiastically. And JHS is one of the highest profile players and picks that they've had in this embrace development era. And it raises the question of their ability to develop. It raises their question of their ability to identify the players that they want to develop. Was this, chicken and egg scouting versus development? Does this lessen your faith in their ability to do either or both?
Yeah, look, the fact they could have had Pajemski, could have had Jaime Jaquez, these guys, the players that were chosen right behind him,
does not
makes this more bitter, I think, for Lakers fans. Certainly, I do think and we don't necessarily have to get super deep into this, but it gets into a really interesting question about where does Hood-Schifino now fit into the development program at all? Do they make him a non-priority in the G League? Does he start games there? Do you skip him because, is it better to make his value go up? Are you ignoring him as part of I don't know what this means in a player development culture when you've taken one player and said he's not. And again, they can bring him back. So it's, you don't want to cut bait entirely. I just think it's an interesting thing. But
real quick, my hope would be that they would focus on still trying to develop him, if for no other reason than he's a point guard on their G League team. And the better he plays, the better the other players who they may care about more in the G League will play.
And they may need him at some point.
Sure, I'm just saying that would be my hope.
I think you just from a do right by human beings standpoint, they ought to treat him and give him all the seriousness and attention that he, would otherwise get. But I can't say for sure that he would remain a priority with their G League program. So it's just something to watch for. The difference between player identification, and every scouting department misses. Jerry West missed. Had Hood-Schifino not gotten hurt last year in training camp, last year could look differently. This whole thing could play out differently, and so on.
If Gabe Vincent doesn't get hurt, we think about a lot of this stuff last year differently, because Gabe Vincent's on the floor, and the idea that JHS isn't available, if nothing else, becomes less pronounced.
You never know. And but let's just say he was a flat out miss. It happens.
Yeah.
The Lakers, the bright spot has been their ability to identify players, bringing in guys like Austin Reaves, finding sort of randos who end up, they drafted very well, to gather all the pieces that they used to trade for Anthony Davis. All of those players have been legitimate NBA players. And Lonzo Ball certainly could have been, much, much more than he has been and not gotten hurt. They have found Austin Reaves. They have, even guys like Jay Huff and Scottie Pippen, who have been two-way players for the Lakers, didn't stick here, but are now working on contracts in other places. I think Scottie Pippen has 18 points already in Thursday's game that they're playing as we're talking here. So he has played very well. Jay Huff has earned his way into I believe, a regular contract at this point.
He does have a regular contract. It's
with
low,
Washington.
but he has a real contract.
It's a regular contract.
Yeah, it is.
This part of it is interesting. And like, they've got a developmental spot for Bronny. They've got one for Traore. Now they have Oliveri in there as well. And how you find space for these guys to end up on your big club is something that they clearly have not figured out yet. And I admit, like, I didn't think Pippen looked very good. I didn't think Jay Huff looked that good.
Well, and
it remains to be seen whether or not those guys will be impactful NBA players. But other teams seem to have found some use, and Pippen, at least early this season, particularly Pippen, has played very well.
I am, I guess, cautiously optimistic that on the development side for the Lakers, things may improve, just in the sense they've talked a lot about more coordination between the big club and the little club. They brought in Zach Guthrie this year.
It is a new crew. It's a different group of people.
I also feel like if I had to peg the problem more between identifying talent versus developing talent, I am highly inclined to say that the problem has been much more about developing talent. If you go through the last 10 years of various rookies that they've had or second-round picks that they've identified, Max Christie, we will see, this is the first year he's ever really been given any type of dedicated role and things like that. He's
with expectations.
Right. He is off to a slow start with that, but I want to see more of it. Austin Reaves, obviously, they spotted that well. THT looked intriguing for a little while. He's looked intriguing to a couple of different teams. He's still in the league right now. And, if you're a 46th pick who can manage to carve out a career of 5 to 10 years.
Sixth or seventh year in the league, isn't it?
2020 was his first year. The 2020 bubble year was THT's rookie year.
So fifth year.
Yeah, fifth year. But, if he carves out a few more years in the league, especially once that big contract that the Lakers gave him is now done, and you're talking about new teams, new contracts, at 46, that's
5 years more than most 46 picks.
Right.
Yeah.
They obviously did not value Alex Caruso enough, but that was somebody that they spotted and developed. Svi Mikhailuk bounced around the league, but he did as well as most second round
he's
picks
still there.
Mo Wagner can play. Like, insert all the Franz's brother jokes. He can play. Like Ivica Zubats. They bricked keeping him, but they nailed that pick.
That wasn't a good trade.
It was not a good trade. It was not
bad trade.
Like a guy like David Nwaba had like a 6-year career in the NBA. That's really good.
What I think it is? I think what it is they're in a bit of a slump. Depending on what you think about Christie, they're in a bit of a slump. In that Christie hasn't. And Jalen Hood-Schifino obviously is, at the very least for the Lakers, is not going to be. It doesn't look like he's going to have a future here.
And Maxwell Lewis is not looking good.
Maxwell Lewis is not an NBA player. I'm just pretty firm about that. And you could say Dalton Connect. Well, it's like, okay, I'm not really going to give the scouting and drafting department, the front office, a ton of credit for drafting the guy projected to go, in the top 10 when he falls to you at 17.
But how well Dalton develops.
Correct. That's the thing. So from here, what do you do? And I think the disconnect has really been that the turning.
They've never cared about this as a long-term thing.
Turning these players. This is why I think it's like
the kids were always seen as future trade picks, or future trade assets. B.I., Lonzo, Randall, Hart.
Yes, all of that.
Kuzma. They
and somebody like Reeves sort of accidentally becomes somebody that is valuable. Caruso almost accidentally becomes, like, in the wake of need and playing time and disastrous seasons, becomes like this thing. Like, well, look what we found. This is why I think the approach that the Lakers are taking with Bronny, and quite frankly, Bronny is taking, is smart, because the hope becomes that you get these guys in and you actually try to groom players to be what you need them to be in the NBA. And and figure that out. And like you don't get that at the college level. Like your college coach is not going to be able to figure out what you need to be with the team that has your contract rights, because for obvious reasons. The Lakers, we will see over the next couple seasons if they get good at that, at taking players and finding, like the Heat are brilliant at this, at identifying talent that's not just pretty good players. Like Scottie Pippen can apparently play in the NBA, but can he play for us? Can he do the things that we need him to do? And that's what the Lakers have to figure out. And this unity between the big club and the G League and all these other things, we will find out over time if they're actually good at it or just good at talking about it. And so it is a fascinating development with JHS and what it might mean going forward. I hope it doesn't mean the end of his development, because still think he could turn into a decent NBA player, and I'm always rooting for players to do that. So
absolutely.
Anyway, Locked On Lakers on YouTube is where you can go hang out with over 25,000 subscribers. Do sign up for the newsletter, lockedondaily.com. Go click on Locked On Lakers and any other newsletters you'd like to subscribe to. We'll see everyone after the game.